That's okay.
Oh yeah, this one's a
How are you doing, Jerry?
I'm very good.
You look just wonderful.
Thank you.
Business good, and are you still? Yes, I see. Come down.
I got so much advice from my brother Tom and Gov and others. I had 2 tablets full of information, so I had to cut it down and just put it on some index cards so I wouldn't forget some of the things they told me. It was all very interesting, so I will be reading a lot of the happenings of Irish Prairie off these index cards. As I told John when we came out here, I felt like we were at the summit. Maybe it's going to be more than just a gathering of Irish Prairie. My wife couldn't be here today. We missed one John was going to have it earlier, and our granddaughter was having her first communion. The day happened to be my wife's birthday, so I said, well, it's up to you whether I go or not. And she said, well, I want to make this a whole week to celebrate my birthday, so she's gone with my daughter and granddaughter shopping, and that's kind of painful, but we'll talk about that later. So she couldn't be here, but she wishes everyone their best. Of course, it is a pleasure for me to be here, and I'm particularly elated to see Lawrence Larkin here. I wish that Margaret Larkin Dowell could be here, but she would have had to travel quite a ways and couldn't be with us. But this is where the dedication of the beautiful Knox Farm subdivision and Larkin Lane. The land we're standing on, I believe, will belong to the Bell Bruce's wife. So they're moving out there.
I'm sorry I didn't cut the grass.
People seem to love to come back to Irish Prairie. I want to thank John and Janet for asking me to be part of this. As I said, after talking to so many, I had to put a lot of these things down on index cards. Let's go back 165 years to 1835, the start of Irish Prairie. In 1835, the U.S. government entered into a treaty with the Potawatomi Indians who inhabited this land. They were great hunters and fishermen. They were peaceful tribes. They were reluctant to give up this land because they loved it so much, but they did give it up. And at that time, many immigrants from Europe flooded to McHenry County. Most of those of German immigration moved to Johnsburg, German Prairie, north of McHenry. The Irish settled here on Irish Prairie. Soon after they settled here, they established a school district, district number 42, and the school itself was called Prairie School. It was built just across from the Walter Bulger farm, about a mile and a half south of here. After that, school was abandoned, and a new school was built in 1914, just at the corner of Bull Valley and Green Street. Sometimes it's called Bearville Road, sometimes it's called Elgin Road. Just 1 block south, and that's the school that Mrs. Larkin taught at. The old school was moved to the Walter Bulger farm and served as a chicken house for many years. The building is gone completely now, and I like to kid them that if the Landmark Commission was still around, if he was part of the city, he could never get away with destroying that building. But it was in pretty bad shape, and I can understand why he had to do it. Now, before we go into too much of the New Prairie School 1 block south of here, I want to go back a little bit to some of the things that happened. Around 1900, a group of sportsmen headed by Patsy Boley. Patsy Boley is one of the lead men in the old McHenry brewery. They established and secured the hunting and fishing rights out here. And at the end of what was then Idledell Road is now Bull Valley Road, and of course Chuck Miller Road is just a half a block this side of that. They built a clubhouse called Ballyo'Greg, and that clubhouse was named after a similar clubhouse in Ireland. Across the river was the home that the late Charles Comiskey, the old Roman, have a pole there, and every night when the Sox would win a game, he'd run that lantern, a lighted lantern up the pole so we'd all know that the White Sox won. You wonder why he did that? Well, we didn't have radio, we didn't have television, we didn't even have electricity. So those were quite the time. That Sportsman Club became quite a center of recreation for both men and women. And the only way to get there was by boat, by horseback, or on foot. There were very few vehicles in those days, and then when they did come into being, the road was just a gravel or dirt road, and of course, in the springtime, cars got stuck all the time, and the farmers were always busy pulling them off. And came a horse, and then later, of course, was the tractor. In those days, baseball became quite a sport, and this area was no exception. Every community had their baseball team, and this Irish Prairie was no exception. The team here was called, quite appropriately, the Shamrocks, and of course we were one of the better amateur teams around, thanks in large part to the Larkin boys, who were really great athletes. I always felt if the war hadn't interfered, they would have had a chance to become professional ball players, but of course the war took precedent. Now, oftentimes we played Johnsburg, and that became a great friendly rivalry. It wasn't always so friendly at the time, but since it's all in the past, we're great friends. They had a player up there by the name of Walter Smith. He hadn't been so darn busy on the farm. I'm sure he would have made the throwing circuit because he had a beautiful swing, and we just dreaded seeing him come to bat. But it was fun playing against them, and it was fun seeing them here today. Back to the 1920s, when Prohibition was the law of the land, then called the Kennebec Farm, where McHenry Shores is now located. They installed a whiskey still in the barn. They gravelled the Idledell Road, which was just a mud path at the time. They put a fence around the buildings. They had German Shepherd guard dogs to keep the nosy people out. And they were all set to go for a booming business, or so it seemed, when all of a sudden one night the barn, the whiskey still and all went up in flames. And it was speculated that the federal agents were about to move in on them, and so they set the fire to destroy all the evidence. In their haste to leave, they left one of their German shepherds, and he made his home after a while on one of the farms about a mile south of here. It was the Nordine farm at the time, and that dog was quite appropriately named Devil. And each dog on Irish Prairie, our dog's name was Teddy, the Larkin dog's name was Prince. They all had their own territories, and if they crossed into each other's territories, there was bound to be a fight that ensued. I don't have time to get into everything I would like to. You wondered why this road at one time was called Elgin Road, and the reason was there was no Route 31. At that time, Route 12 came as far as where the Farmhouse Tavern, now McDonald's, is located, and there was no road into McHenry. So to get to Elgin, they had to take this road and then cut across and go on Route 12 into Elgin. I might also add that about in 1928, when they were building what is now Front Street into McHenry, that huge boulder that's in the Pearl Street Veterans Park was excavated from that land. So Irish Prairie has sort of moved into McHenry. Now for a few words about the Knox family and where this beautiful subdivision is now located. Robert and Edna Knox raised their fine family on this farm where we gather today. It wasn't always easy with the Great Depression and all, but Robert and Edna always had a welcome smile for everyone they met. Robert did custom farming. I meant he'd go from farm to farm with his threshing machine or corn shredding machine with a steel-wheeled tractor. And on the gravel road, you could hear that for almost a mile away, and it was always a welcome and very exciting thing when that Robert pulled in with his threshing machine or shredding machine. And we all pitched in, and of course they had big gatherings, and they cooked homemade meals for all the gang that was there helping. And it was quite a joyous time. Finally, I've saved most of the best for last. The teaching career of Mrs. Evelyn Larkin. Mrs. Larkin, teacher and mother, shaped the lives of many children with her dedication to the profession. During her entire career of teaching, none of us can ever remember her missing a day. There was no such thing as substitute teachers, and if there had been, they wouldn't have had a job anyhow because Mrs. Larkin never missed. Even with the task of raising 5 small children and teaching 8 grades in one room, on cold winter mornings, Mrs. Larkin would be there early to start a fire in the corner stove. It was just a little coal wood-burning stove to heat up the room so the students could be warm when the students arrived. Many times we would sit around the stove and she would read to us for 15 or 20 minutes and then she'd say, okay, back to your seats now, we got to get to work. And we always hated that because we loved the stories that she used to read to us. And realizing that children have boundless energy, the desks in that school were all put on runners so that they could be moved to the side of the room. And in the inclement weather, mostly in the wintertime, the seats would be moved so we had a little play area in the room. We had some really wild games in there. I remember one time, I think we were playing basketball, and the basketball went off the side and broke the glass in one of the big clocks on the wall. And these clocks were wind-up clocks. They were not electric clocks.
Who was the one that moved the hand?
I don't remember that.
That was Bill.
Mrs. Larkin had such a personal touch on so many things, whether it be the Christmas parties, the school parties, the picnic at the end of the year. Everything was always a joy and a pleasure with her guidance. I have with me today one of the final report cards that happens to be my own. My sister Mabel is here, I'm sure, and she told my wife one time that I never applied myself like I should. But I have my report card here. I'll pass it around, you can look at it. I want you to look at the handwriting, the beautiful handwriting that Mrs. Larkin had. And as I close this brief history of Irish Prairie, there are so many other things. The Cherry Blossom Lane, Clayberry Farm, Apple Orchard, just the Musgrove family that originally owned the Larkin property. But to go into that would take another half hour, which we don't want to spend. But as I close this brief history, I want to pay a special tribute to Mrs. Evelyn Larkin, a remarkable lady, a dedicated and wonderful teacher, and above all, a profiling person. And thank you for listening. Let's enjoy the refreshments and just take a look at this beautiful subdivision that John and Janet have developed for the children. Thank you.
Bill, we got Mayor Kuda here who might want to say a few words, probably.
Thank you, John. Unlike Alderman Bolger, I don't have any prepared remarks, but after listening to him for a few minutes talking about what a great teacher Mrs. Larkin was, I really wish she could come back and tell us a little bit about the Bolger boys. Because I think that's when the stories would really get interesting. I also would like to thank John and Janet for putting together this morning's little celebration and dedication. I'll have to tell you though, I think the thanks should probably really go to Janet. I have a sneaky hunch that most of this was done by Janet, and she really deserved it.
No,
Jan?
Jan.
Well, Janet's a gracious hostess, and she is the one who walked me the cookies and lemonade, so I thank her for that. And also, like Alderman Bolger, I think now we should spend a few moments enjoying each other's company, enjoying the cookies and lemonade, and thank you all for coming out this morning. Mel, you have a question?
Is the city going to restore the barn to its original condition?
I really right now that barn is owned by the county, but they asked if the city would take it over. Unfortunately, I think the city already owns about 5 or 6 barns, But
This is right in the center of town.
you know, we were thinking
right
though.
across from the city
Hey,
hall.
Steve, I'd move, let's take up a collection of the property owners.
I was just going to. Nell, you're going to be looking at that barn, aren't you?
I didn't know he was here. I wouldn't have said that.
We'll make sure that you get that first hat to throw some money at. Okay.
I'll take up the collection if you'll restore it.
Okay, we'll do that. Thank you, everyone.
If anybody's got any stories, I would certainly think Tom or somebody might have a story. Yeah. There was one short for words.
Didn't have to coax him.
But one thing before time comes up, I did want to, you know, with all the classes being in one room, you sort of watch what the other classes were doing. Two of the students, as I remember, skipped a grade. One of them went on to be a very successful assistant to the city clerk for McHenry or Walt for many, many years, Helen and I, of course. And another, I can't remember his name, he went on to be president of the state. He did pretty well.
Bill made some reference to a broken clock, and he ought to remember it. Every day he'd move it up a few minutes, and finally, when we got home from school about 1:15 one day, my mother thought something was up and found out that Mrs. Larkin said, I never could understand why I had to wait so long for them to come from high school to pick me up. And so that was the end of that. But I'll tell you this about Mrs. Larkin. My mother and Dad used to say, if you ever give Mrs. Larkin trouble, you're going to have trouble at home, so we never did. But talk a little bit about the Knox farm here. Nettie Knox, Grandpa Nettie Knox, who, when I remember hearing a story about them, they were all dairy farmers along here, and they all worked hard until Howard came along. But anyhow, Frank Waddles was in the cattle business, and Frank sold Nettie Knox some steers. And he also sold our farm some steers, and the price went down. That didn't turn out very good. And Nettie Knox was loading the milk to go to town one day, and Frank Waddle stopped in again, and he said, what are you going to do with all that money, he said, that you get from the milk? And Nettie said, not buy steers from the likes of ye, he said. But talking about baseball players and the Larkins, and also Waddles. I think in apologies to Wally Smith, I think Jim Larkin might have been the best player that ever played here. Jim did not apply himself quite as much as some of the others might have, but he had more natural ability. We started a baseball team, the Irish Prairie Shamrocks. The oldest was in high school and the youngest was in 7th grade. We used to play band teams, and we held our own because Jim would pitch a two-hitter, and maybe he'd get 4 hits and Jerry would get a couple. But anyhow, the thing I remember about Jim, and he was pitching. We're up at Johnsburg one day, and I'm playing second base. The close ball game, and there was a runner on third. It was Cy Myers, and there's a ground ball hit to me in second, and I threw the ball too soon. He got back or scored. And the next day, Howard Waddles came in the bank and he said, why didn't you throw the ball to Larkin? He didn't know what to do with it. And about Bobby Knox here, the father of all the Knox clan, he must have been a very, very religious man, because I can remember on Sunday mornings, he always wanted to race us. He was in a hurry to get to church, I think. No, Mrs. Larkin had the best handwriting that I've ever seen. And, remember the scripts were up there above the board, but some of us didn't inherit. Gov's not the world's best writer. And I don't know, Helen Knox, I don't know how she... Yeah, Helen graduated class of, what was it, 1918? 1937. There were 3, and the late Bob Adams used to brag about he was finished 3rd in his class. There were 3 of us in the class. But congratulations, and I'm kind of sorry to see that you didn't find us to the Irish. Bruce came here there, but I guess you have to put up with it. You got him, Lois, you're going to have to start wearing green shirts. That's what that shit.
Any other stories from anybody?
Howard, you got any story? Come on, Howard.
Just when I tried to burn the barn down.
There's still a black spot over there.
Tell them about everybody that used to work for you in the water.
Ooh, the water.
Tell them about the barn burning first.
Oh, it's Joanne and me, and the rest of them went back to school in September, and we didn't know what to do, so we thought we'd stir up a little excitement. But the trouble is, she called my mother. She said we started a fire, and she looked out and saw the smoke up. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there.
I don't have to worry about what smoke's going to do with it.
And Mrs. Larkin let us look out the windows and see the fire trucks. Well, I got a big thrill watching the fire trucks. I got no supper that night.
Oh, you can sit down all right?
You know what? Maybe Janet, my wife Janet, could read what it says on the plaque, which is right down here, so everybody can go look at the plaque when you're done. But
there's sheets under all the centerpieces so that you can take one home and share with your families if they couldn't come.
All right, Janet suggested that we have some introductions. I think the best way to do it is maybe all let's start back here on the left and just go around the tables and everybody give an introduction of just who they are.
I think she likes the
Start with the gentleman standing up.
We shouldn't put her right in front of her.
3 times in the noon hour was over. Didn't dare get back late. But you wonder about the cars? There are no cars in those days.
I have a real quick question. Somebody had asked me to ask the question, why only one side of the barn was ever shingled? Does anybody have a...
The other side didn't leave.
Did you hear that?
Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Did you hear the answer?
Yes.
You know,
Thank you.
you realize that there was only 2 sides of the barn that were painted at one time?
And that was because...
Nobody looked around the back of the barn.
Inside the were invisible.
Ellen had a picture here of the students at Prairie School. I think you should pass it around and see if someone could determine just who they are.
go ahead, Janet.
Okay, Knox Farm. This is the site of the Knox Farm on the Irish Prairie, a farming community which was settled by immigrants from Ireland soon after a governmental treaty with the Potawatomi Indians in 1895. Okay, 35, sorry. The barn pictured above, located about 300 feet south of this monument, was owned by the Knox family. The Irish Prairie was settled by families with the names of Bulger, Knox, Larkin, Musgrove, Walsh, Frisbee, Baird, Relihan, Phelan, Cleary, Murray, Conway, and McCabe. The Irish Prairie is an area approximately bordered by the Fox River on the east, Gracie Road on the south, the railroad tracks on the west, and the McHenry-Nunda Township line on the north. Larkin Lane is dedicated to Mrs. Evelyn Larkin and the Larkin family. Mrs. Larkin devoted her life to teaching the children of the Irish Prairie in a one-room rural school, Prairie School District number 42, located 1 block south of this monument.
And that plaque is right down there on that rock. Take a look at it.
Let's end with a quick prayer, and then you're welcome to stay and visit as long as you like.
No, Tom, we'll just do it.
And he had a brother.
Yeah, I just saw Sweet emotion.
What?